My family accused me of stealing for 3 years and destroyed my teenage life. But when my younger brother confessed, it was always him. I rejected their apology and cut them off forever. I'm 23 years old. I work at a tech company doing technical support. And honestly, I need to get this off my chest because what happened basically ruined my entire adolescence, and I still have trouble processing that it was all a lie. The thing is, from when I was 15 until I was 18, my entire family treated me like I was a thief, a liar, and basically the worst person in the world. And it turns out it was never me. It was my younger brother the whole time. But let's start from the beginning because this story is long and complicated. When I was 15 years old, I lived with my parents. My older sister Melissa, who was 17, and my younger brother Brandon, who was 11. We were a normal family. I guess. Nothing special. My dad, Nicholas, worked in construction and had two hobbies he loved with all his heart. He collected knives and baseball cards like he had a huge collection that he'd been building since before I was born. Some of those cards were worth a lot of money, and the knives, too. They were like his pride and joy. My mom worked in an office. I don't remember exactly what she did. Something with insurance, I think. Melissa was the perfect daughter. Good grades, responsible, never got into trouble. Brandon was the baby of the family, the spoiled one, the one everyone adored because he was the youngest and supposedly the cutest. I was the middle child, and looking back I should have seen it coming because I was always kind of invisible in that family. I wasn't bad or anything, but I wasn't special either. I got decent grades, had some friends, played video games, normal stuff for a 5-year-old kid. The relationship with my parents was fine. We weren't super close, but there weren't any big problems either. I got along well with Melissa. She was always fair to me. With Brandon, it was more complicated because he was always very attention-seeking, and at that age I was already in my teenage world, so I didn't pay much attention to him. Everything started going to hell one day when my dad noticed that one of his knives from the collection was missing. It was a special one. I don't know exactly which one because I was never really interested in his collection, to be honest, but he was obsessed with having everything organized and cataloged. At first he thought he'd stored it wrong or something, but then more things started disappearing. First another knife, then some baseball cards. My dad went crazy searching all over the house, checking every corner, and I remember we were all helping to look because he was genuinely worried. Then the worst thing happened. One day my mom was cleaning my room, which I hated because they never let me have privacy, and she found one of the knives under my bed. I got home from school, and both my parents were sitting in the living room with the knife on the table, and the look on their faces was like I'd killed someone. My dad asked me what it was doing there, and I honestly had no idea. I told him I didn't know, that I hadn't put it there, that someone else must have done it. But they didn't believe me. Not at all. My mom started crying, saying, how could I steal from my own father? That she hadn't raised me like that. That she was disappointed. My dad just looked at me with this mix of fury and sadness that I'll never forget. I tried to explain to them 1,000 times that I hadn't taken anything, that it didn't make sense because I wasn't even interested in the knives. But the more I tried to defend myself, the angrier they got. They said I was lying, that the evidence was right there, that I should stop playing innocent. They punished me severely. Took away my phone, my computer, grounded me for like 2 months. I had to do all the household chores, wash dishes, clean bathrooms, mow the lawn, everything. And the worst part is they started treating me differently, like I was a criminal in my own house. The news spread quickly through the extended family. I don't know who told them. Probably. My mom called my grandparents or something, but suddenly everyone knew that I'd supposedly stolen. At family gatherings, people looked at me weird. Made passive-aggressive comments, treated me like I was going to steal something from them too. At school, some classmates found out. I don't know how, but news flies in small towns, and they started bothering me about it. They called me a thief, made jokes about hiding their stuff when I was around. It was horrible. I basically became a social pariah. But here's the worst part. Things kept disappearing. Every couple of weeks, my dad would notice something else was missing. Another baseball card, another knife. Even money started disappearing from my mom's wallet. And guess who they blamed? Obviously me. It didn't matter that I swore to them it wasn't me. It didn't matter that I was under extreme surveillance in that house. They were convinced I was doing it. They increased my punishments, gave me absurd rules like I had to leave my bedroom, door open all the time. I couldn't lock the bathroom door. They had to know where I was every minute of the day. My sister Melissa was the only one who kind of believed me, or at least didn't treat me like garbage. She would tell me privately that she didn't understand how I could be stealing if I was always grounded and watched, but she also didn't dare contradict my parents much because she didn't want to get in trouble. Brandon, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to everything. He kept being the spoiled kid who did nothing wrong, always getting attention and affection while I was treated like the black sheep. When I was about to turn 16, I had a little hope that things would get better, that maybe my parents would calm down and I could have a somewhat normal life. I'd planned to ask them to let me get my driver's license. Several of my friends already had theirs and I wanted that freedom. But like a week before my birthday, a particularly valuable baseball card disappeared. I think my dad said it was worth like $800 or something. He completely exploded, accused me in front of the whole family, yelled at me that I was ungrateful, a liar, that I didn't deserve anything. They canceled my birthday. There wasn't even a cake. And when I asked them about the license, my dad laughed bitterly and said there was no way he was giving me that privilege. Those years between 15 and 18 were the worst of my life, literally. I started doubting myself. Seriously. There were moments when I thought, what if I did it and I don't remember? What if I have some mental problem and I'm stealing things without realizing it? Because it didn't make sense, things kept disappearing, and I was the only possible culprit according to my family. I started having trouble sleeping, horrible anxiety. I had trouble concentrating at school. My grades dropped, and that only made my parents treat me worse. They said that on top of being a thief, I was lazy and had no future. The surveillance became unbearable. My parents constantly searched my room, read my messages when I could briefly use the phone, interrogated me about every little thing. If I arrived 10 minutes late from school, they had to know exactly where I'd been and with whom. It was like living in a prison. I couldn't have friends come over because my parents thought I would use them to sell the stolen stuff. Or something. It was ridiculous. My social life disappeared completely. Brandon, meanwhile, kept being the perfect son. They never punished him for anything. He always had the latest video game consoles, new clothes, everything he asked for. They took him to his activities, celebrated his school achievements, treated him like a prince. I would watch them with him, and it hurt so much because I remembered when I also received some of that love and attention, and now it was like I was garbage to them. There was a particularly horrible moment when I was like 17. Money had disappeared from my mom's wallet. I think it was like $200. She confronted me crying, telling me that money was to pay bills, that because of me they were going to have financial problems. I begged her to believe me, told her to search my stuff, to look everywhere, that she wasn't going to find anything because I didn't have it. But she just said I had already hidden it or sold it or whatever. That day I broke down. I cried so much I thought I was going to drown. And all I could think was that I couldn't wait to turn 18 to get out of that house. The countdown to my 18th birthday was the only thing that kept me sane those last months. I had a plan. I was going to get a full-time job, rent a room somewhere, maybe with roommates, and get out of there forever. I didn't care if I had to sleep on the floor or eat ramen every day. Anything was better than continuing to live in that atmosphere of hate and mistrust. The day I turned 18 was surreal. My parents gave me like a small cake and some minor gifts, I think out of guilt or to keep up appearances, I don't know. But I already had everything planned. I'd gotten a job at an electronics store. Nothing glamorous, but it paid enough, and I'd found a room to rent with 2 guys who also worked there. 2 weeks after my birthday, I told them I was moving out. My mom cried. My dad got angry and told me I was ungrateful, that after everything I'd done, they still gave me a roof and food. I just grabbed my stuff, put it in my old car that I'd bought with my own money from working, and left. I cut contact completely. I blocked my parents on the phone, deleted them from social media, everything. Melissa tried to keep in contact with me, and I would respond occasionally because she had never treated me badly. But I didn't want to know anything about that family either. The first months living alone were financially difficult, but emotionally, it was like being able to breathe again. I didn't have anyone accusing me, watching me, treating me like a criminal. I could be myself, live my life, start over. 5 years went by. 5 years in which I built my own life, got a better job in tech support, moved to a decent apartment by myself, made new friends, even had a couple of relationships. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was mine, and nobody treated me like garbage. Melissa and I talked occasionally. She had gotten married and had her own life too. Every once in a while she would ask if I didn't want to reconcile with our parents, but I always said no, that I was better off without them. Then, like 6 months ago, I got a call from my mom. I don't know how she got my new number. Probably Melissa gave it to her. At first, I wasn't going to answer, but something told me to do it. My mom sounded weird, like nervous. She told me they needed to talk to me, that it was important, to please come to the house. I told her I had nothing to talk about with them, to leave me alone. But she insisted, said they had discovered something important about the thefts from years ago. That got my attention. Honestly, because I'd never had closure on that topic. I agreed to go, but only because my curiosity got the better of me. I arrived at the house and it felt super weird to be there after so long. My parents looked older, obviously, and the house was a little different but basically the same. They sat down with me in the living room, that same living room where they'd confronted me so many times, and my dad started talking. He said that a few weeks ago things had started disappearing from the house again, just like before. Money, some valuable objects, and since I hadn't lived there for years, clearly it couldn't be me. My mom continued saying that they had installed security cameras all over the house to catch the thief, thinking that maybe it was someone breaking in from outside or something. But when they reviewed the video, they were shocked. It was Brandon. My younger brother, who was now like 18 years old, was stealing from the house. They confronted him, and, after a lot of pressure, he confessed everything. Not just the recent thefts, but he admitted it had been him all along, since he was 11 years old. He had been stealing the knives, the baseball cards, the money, everything. And that time they found the knife in my room, he had put it there to frame me. I sat there processing this and I couldn't even speak. Years. Years of my life ruined, of being treated like a criminal, of losing my adolescence, of trauma and anxiety. And it was all because my one-year-old brother decided to steal and blame me. And my parents, these adults who were supposed to protect me, believed I was guilty without hesitation and destroyed my life. My parents started apologizing, saying they were so sorry, that they had made a terrible mistake, that they didn't know how to make it up to me. My mom was crying. My dad looked genuinely devastated. But I just felt rage. A rage I'd been holding for 5 years, and that was now exploding. I asked them how they could do that to me, how they could believe in one-year-old kid over their own son, how they could ruin my life without even considering that maybe I was telling the truth. I told them their apology meant nothing, that they couldn't give me back those years, that they couldn't erase the trauma they caused me. I was shaking with rage as I spoke. My dad tried to explain that they thought they were doing the right thing, that the evidence pointed to me, that they never suspected Brandon because he was too young. I told him that was the most pathetic excuse I'd heard, that their job as parents was to investigate properly before destroying their son's life. My mom asked me to please forgive them, that they wanted to make it up to me somehow. I told them there was no possible compensation, and I got up to leave. Before I left, they told me they were having a family dinner for my mom's birthday in a few weeks, and to please come. That they wanted the family to know the truth. I hesitated, but Melissa called me later, begging me to go, telling me it was important that everyone knew I had been innocent all this time. I agreed, but I knew it was going to be horrible. The dinner was exactly the disaster I imagined. I arrived and several family members were there, uncles, aunts, cousins, my grandparents. Everyone looked at me weird, because basically, I had disappeared from the family for 5 years. The dinner started awkward with forced conversation. Then my dad stood up and gave like a speech saying they had to make an important announcement, that they had discovered I had never stolen anything, that it had been Brandon all along, and that they owed me a huge apology. The silence that followed was heavy. Some relatives looked shocked. others confused. My cousin Amber, who had always been kind of unbearable, made a comment trying to be funny, something like, "Well, at least now we know where to hide our stuff when Brandon comes over," and laughed. I exploded. I told her it wasn't funny, that her comment was exactly the type of shit I had to put up with for years, while the whole family treated me like a criminal. That maybe she could make jokes because she was never the one who suffered the consequences. Her dad, my Uncle Jason, got involved saying not to talk to his daughter like that she was just trying to lighten the mood. I told him the mood didn't need lightening. It needed everyone to acknowledge the damage they did to me. I looked around the table and told them all that each one of them had treated me like garbage, had judged me, isolated me, and that none of them had bothered to ask for my version or support me. That they had all been complicit in ruining my adolescence. My mom started crying again, asking me to please not ruin her birthday. That was the last straw. I told her she had ruined years of my life, but I had to worry about not ruining her dinner. I stood up, threw my napkin on the table, and left. My dad followed me to the parking lot, trying to stop me, telling me to wait, that he understood I was angry but to stay. I asked him directly, if Brandon hadn't confessed, if they hadn't put up those cameras, would they have ever believed me? He stayed quiet because we both knew the answer. I told him that said it all and I left. The following weeks were chaos according to what Melissa told me. Brandon, who apparently had kept stealing even after confessing, stole my grandparents' truck and crashed it in an accident. He was drunk or high, I don't remember the details well. They arrested him, and my grandparents were furious. They kicked him out of their house where he was living because my parents didn't want him there anymore either. He got a criminal record. My parents had to cancel the college fund they had for him to pay for the truck damages and legal expenses. My parents called me again saying they wanted to compensate me for everything. They offered to pay my student loans, buy me a new car, basically throw money at me to feel better. I told them I didn't want anything from them, that money doesn't buy forgiveness, that they couldn't just pay to erase what they did. My mom said, then what did I want them to do? I told her honestly, I didn't know if there was anything they could do. The ironic thing is that Brandon, even after all that, kept stealing. Melissa told me he took money from my parents' emergency fund, like $5,000, and used it for who knows what. My parents finally kicked him out of the house completely. He's living who knows where now, probably with friends or something. He's on probation for the truck incident, but according to Melissa, he's not following the rules and will probably end up in more trouble. Like 2 months ago, I sent a final message to my parents. I told them I appreciated that at least now they knew the truth, but that the damage was done. That I spent years of my life being blamed for something I didn't do. Years being treated like the worst person in the world by my own family. Years developing anxiety and trust issues that I'm still working on in therapy. That maybe someday I could forgive them, but for now I needed space. Probably for a long time. Maybe forever. That it wasn't revenge or resentment. I simply couldn't have in my life. People who had hurt me so much, even if they were my family. My mom responded saying she understood, that she respected my decision, that they would always love me and the door was open if I ever changed my mind. My dad sent a shorter message saying something similar. I haven't responded and don't plan to anytime soon. Melissa stays in contact with me. She was the only one who always treated me like a person during all this. She tells me occasionally how things are with the family, but I've asked her not to give me too many details because I don't want to know. I know my parents are going to therapy trying to process everything. That they basically lost 2 sons. Me by choice and Brandon through his own actions. Part of me feels something like pity for them, but a bigger part feels they deserve it. I have my job, my apartment, my friends who don't know anything about this family drama and treat me normal. I'm dating a girl who's great, and things are going well with her. I'm in therapy, working on the trust issues and anxiety I developed. It's not perfect, but it's my life, built by me, without family drama, without false accusations, without having to constantly prove my innocence. And that's enough for now, I guess.